Hey guys, this is GamerGuy. Welcome to another Pokemon trade card game discussion video. I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit briefer. If you saw the Arceus set, battles and whatnot, the last video I put up, I was in the middle of getting a rather nasty fever and whatnot at that point. Unsure at this stage whether it was actually COVID or whether it was just a flu or something. It's probably the latter, but either way, I was not very well over that sort of time period. This was just before Christmas when I actually got reasonably better, but I haven't managed to shake this stupid cough off yet, which is really annoying, and it's been causing a lot of issues in trying to actually both stream and, want to record stuff like this. So we're going to try and get through this relatively quickly, but Heart Gold Soul Silver is a very important set, so I do have to take a decent bit of time here to discuss that. So hopefully we can get through this relatively unscathed. So Heart Gold Soul Silver, the beginning of the second block in Gen 5. This is just 5 sets this time, not 11 sets like DPP was, so much smaller. There's some mechanical differences here, but nothing in terms of like the actual rules, just in the design of the cards and whatnot. We are now fully back to ×2 weakness on everything. This is how the game has been ever since this point. Gen 9 does not look like it is changing that, so the ×2 weakness is just here to stay from here on out. So everything has that at this point. We do still have some zero energy attacks, but I think they are restricted almost exclusively to the baby Pokemon at this point. Baby Pokemon aren't really baby Pokemon anymore, if I'm being totally honest with you. They cannot evolve into their stages. If you use this Cleffer, you cannot baby evolution this because it doesn't have that on the card. What they do have instead is a very irritating mechanic that we're going to have to deal with in the future, couple of rotations down once we have gotten rid of Uxie and Claydol. They have 30 HP, the same thing as the originals, 30 HPs, no stats down the bottom, so 0 retreat as well. But they do have the Sweet Sleeping Face ability. All of them have an attack that does a thing and then puts them to sleep. If the Cleffer, in this case of Cleffer, but if any of them are asleep, they do not take damage from attacks, so they're not quite as immovable as a flip and your attack fails thing, but they are still very, very irritating, and yeah, we're gonna have to deal with that when this actually becomes meta again. What else was there that was different here? There was something, I'm sure. The new mechanic, I suppose. We don't have, well, there's 2 new mechanics down here. We don't have Lv.X's anymore. As I said before, Arceus was the last set for them. Now we have Pokemon Prime instead, which are basically just stronger versions of the normal Pokemon. We do still have regular ones in here as well. There's a Blissey up the top here, which is respectable. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing, to be totally honest. But then we get to this Blissey, and it's actually really good because it's Pokemon Center when you evolve into it. So this one just has a really strong power for it. We've got this thing that we will talk about soon because this is a meta breaker if we ever saw it, used all over the place. But yeah, we've got stuff like Feraligatr pushing the boundaries of what stage 2 HPs can be. 140 used to be the high point with something like Torterra. Now with these primes we see even 150 is hit here. 140 is fairly standard, so there is that. And then the other thing, which I have down here as well in Pepper's lovely multi-card braces, is the Legend Pokemon. So if you are familiar with V-Unions, if you've seen Mewtwo Control, say, in Gen 8, you'll know the general idea behind these. These are 2-part Legend Pokemon. They are not basics, they are not evolutions, so you cannot use, say, a Pokemon Collector or Professor Elm's training method that's in this set to search for them. You need to specifically just have a generic search for a Pokemon, like Pokemon Communication up here. So you need both parts in order to get this, and when you do that, you get one gigantic basic Pokemon. The ones in this set are only a single Pokemon, so they only give up one prize. All of the future legends are dual Pokemon, say Entei and Suicune, and they will give up 2 prizes as a result. But they are a lot more powerful to compensate. These ones, they're fine. You could probably build a deck around them, but it's going to be very inconsistent for what it does. There's some argument that you could build a deck with, say, this Lugia. It's not completely unreasonable, but I think you'll have a very hard time doing it, so there is that. They do look absolutely gorgeous though, and this is when if one ever does hit the field, which it will in the future. Some of these Pokemon Legends are actually very powerful, so when one hits the field, this is what it looks like in the bracer. Now the text is a little hard to read on the Lugia over here. That's just a product of the scan. Like, they should have picked black text instead of white text for this thing. I have no idea why they treat Lugia as a water type in Heart Gold Soul Silver sets, by the way. It just is. Maybe it was always supposed to be a water type, right? And it just got changed to Psychic because that felt more powerful. I think that was the overall thing. But yeah, it's a water type here. Deal with it. You know. So, just to go over them since we're here, the Lugia's Pokepower is when you put Lugia Legend onto your bench, you may, or into play, it doesn't have to be onto the bench, but there's no effect that I can think of that would put it active immediately. But anyway, once during your turn when you put Lugia Legend into play, you may look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose any energy you find there, and attach them to the Lugia, and then discard any other card that you find there. There's a couple of synergies that you could use to actually make that work, which is cool, I suppose. There's a Delcatty that lets you stack the top 2 cards of your deck as basic energy from the discard, and there's a Dialga that does the same thing, but with 3 in combination of Pokemon and basic energy, and that stacks the top of the deck, so you could get this charged up. It's just like you get 1 attack, and then what do you do from there? Elemental Blast is that fire, water, lightning cost, the same as the original Lugia back in Neo Genesis actually. Same effect too, discard a water, a fire, and a lightning energy from the Lugia. This time it does 200 instead of 90 though, which is enough to one-shot anything in the format. That was one of the many issues with that original Lugia. This one does get 1-hit KOs, and there are ways of facilitating it, but it's just ridiculously inconsistent, and the deck doesn't do a lot other than that. We've been thinking about the Salamence, actually, the... what's it called? Top Accelerator, I think, is the ability. It's the same as Crush Draw from Gen 3, where you look at the top card of your deck, and if it's a basic energy, you attach it to one of your Pokemon. There is, like, again, stack the cards with Delcatty. You could, in theory, do it, but it's so difficult to manage that I just don't think it's viable with the speed of this format. Ho-Oh is a lot more simple. It's effectively just a big base set Charizard. Just about in every way, actually. 140 HP is 20 bigger than the original Charizard. It's got a lower retreat cost. It's a not basic, but it's not a stage 2, so debatably easier to put into play. Sacred Rainbow is the same thing as what Charizard does in the base set. Turns all of your energy into fire, and Brightwing for 4 fire does 100 and discards 1 energy attached to the Ho-Oh. Any energy that you want, although obviously they're all changed to fire, so you can fuel this with the Double Colorless that's in this set. I tried it with Leafeon Lv.X just to get generic energy acceleration. There's Typhlosions in here are probably the better pair, but I just didn't want to go full fire because of the weakness to water. But yeah, it was okay. It didn't win, but it was at least cool, so there was that going for it, I suppose. Okay, and then that's mostly that. So we've got Primes, we've got Legends. These are the recurring traits of the era. We've gone over the fact of ×2 weakness is now always a thing. So now we get to go over all the really strong, impactful cards from this set. And honestly, we have to start with probably the best card ever printed. is that an exaggeration? I'm not actually sure anymore, because maybe at first, like even at first, Double Colorless Energy was absolutely ridiculous when it first came out, because like it fueled stuff like Wigglytuff, and Cypher was really, really good because of it as well. Right, I was good for a lot of reasons, but DCE was up there. There were lots of very strong attacks that it fueled even in the beginning, when so many Pokemon had a lot more colored costs than what they do now. Nowadays, this thing can fuel everything from, you know, something like a Solar Beam over here. There's 2 colors in that. Obviously, all colorless Pokemon get a massive buff from this because they just get to attack easier. Ampharos Prime is a double colorless attacker as well. The last 2 sets, I've kind of said there are so many decks and so many cards that were in the DCE waiting room, right? Garchomp C that we don't get to see now, but maybe in Worlds Week we'll get to see it in like Dialga or something. That relies on it. With an energy gain and a double colorless, you get to Dragon Rush for a single attachment and blitz people with that, like Snipe AZ any way you want. It's absolutely ridiculous how versatile this card is. Arceus is really quite good with this too. Sky Spear is a similar idea, but you just don't have energy gain to make it a 1 attach. But yeah, lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff can use DCE and makes it just ludicrous. Very, very impactful card, and it remains in the format for 3 more generations after this. Like, it's Gen 4, 5, 6, and 7 all have DCE. It was only Gen 8 that introduced a Twin and now Double Turbo Energy instead, which, if you've seen, Double Turbo Energy is DCE but with minus 20 damage on it, and it still saw an insane amount of play. It's only not seeing as much play at the moment because Lugia decks honestly don't need it that much. It still sees play in them, and it still sees play in Mew as well. So it's everywhere. Providing 2 colorless energy as a cost for, you know, not any drawback is probably one of the strongest cards we've ever seen. I don't even think that's an exaggeration. What is, like, not the strongest card we've ever seen, though? We'll just go over the trainers. Bill, unfortunately, same as Mom's Kindness, it's a supporter now. Draw 2 as a supporter is obviously awful. We still have Professor Oak's Visit if you really want a raw draw thing, but we've got better. Felicities is still perfectly good as well. So, yeah, don't bother. Copycat, really, really nice card to have back in the format. We haven't had this since Gen 3, so cool. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's going to play it because our hands are in a weird spot. Sometimes some decks will go really large hand sizes, other decks just kind of don't, right? Like nowadays we don't end up having too many, so I don't know. It's a good shuffle draw option, but we have a better shuffle draw option down here in Professor Oak's New Theory. If you've played Gen 7, you'll know this as Cynthia. Shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 6 cards. It's insane in Gen 7. It is just as good here. Seems to be a little underplayed in a lot of the lists that I have been looking at, though. I can't understand why. I think you've got to play 3 or 4 of this in basically every deck. It is just busted, because there's going to be plenty of times where your powers are either targeted or just don't work anymore, right? Your Claydol is going to get hit down, your Uxies are temporary, everything could get potentially power sprayed if you're playing against an SP deck. I think you've got to just have some actual supporter draw, and that's what we have here. Energy Switch gets a reprint here as well. I will say, I'm very hit and miss on the art style in Heart Gold Soul Silver. I personally just don't like cards like this. I can't even explain why, because the Switch reprint is one of the fan favorites, and I do like this one a lot as well. Been playing this one for absolutely ages. But yeah, a lot of them just don't stick the landing for me. I really don't like Reversal either, both in the fact of its back, and I just don't like this artwork, but it's generation relevant, so I'm going to play it anyway. Yeah, Pokemon Reversal is a really annoying one to have back. It's coin flip gusting, and it was played in practically every deck of the era. Maybe not initially, and definitely some of the lists that we've been playing in testing have not used it, but As we get Junkam later on as well, so we can start reusing it, this is going to be a 2-of in basically every deck, and a lot of games are going to be decided by it, and it's really dumb and stupid. That's all you've got to know. Fisherman makes its comeback from Generation 2, all the way back in Aquapolis was the last time this came out. Very strong card for a select number of decks. I think a 1-of in for Alligator and Typhlosion are good examples. Like Typhlosion, it's mostly because of Ninetales, and we'll get to that later on. So yeah, any deck that's using Ninetales for draw power is definitely going to love this. Full heal, whatever, Switch is generally better. Moo Milk was used in Heal Nix, I believe, and maybe you could use this with like a Turtwig or something as well, I don't know. It now heals 3 damage counters per heads flip instead of 2, so a little bit stronger than it used to be. Don't like the Pokeball, but whatever, it's there. Pokegear makes its first appearance, because I guess this was the thing that you used in Gen 2 anyway, so sure. Yeah, Pokegear 3.0 specifically, the original Pokegear did exist. Instead of getting any trainer card and then locking you out of trainers for the rest of the turn though, this just gets a supporter, but this allows you to like turbo through your deck. Pokegear stuff saw a lot of play in Gen 7 as well. Yeah, a lot of parallels to Gen 7 stuff here. Say Green's decks were really big on using Pokegear, so I don't remember seeing it in like any list from this era, but I have a feeling if you took some modern sensibilities and translated them to the old sort of game and played this kind of thing, really good. The one problem potentially is Spiritomb. Spiritomb is a bot. Trainer lock whilst it's active is annoying to get around, so you do have to have an out to that, and maybe that's why. I don't know. Pokemon Collector is the replacement for Roseanne's Research, and it really just depends on what you want out of your card here. Collector is search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon and put them into hand, whereas Roseanne only gets 2 cards but can get basic energy as well. So situationally depends what you want. I think currently we're mostly working on splits. I know Sai went entirely into this. Yeah, I've been running splits of it, just depends what you want. But 4 of this is going to be a standard once we move on beyond this format, like once rotation hits, so yeah. Pokemon Communication, the card I have been waiting for so long. This is Pokemon Trader, except you are allowed to fail the search. And this is just how I thought Pokemon Trader works this entire time. Choose a Pokemon from the hand, put it into the deck after showing the opponent, and then search for a Pokemon as a separate action. Show it to the opponent, put it into hand. This allows you to just put the Pokemon back into the deck and not get it back out, because your deck is private knowledge. This is not Yu-Gi-Oh!, where if you don't have a target, you are not legally allowed to play a card like this in the first place. We can do whatever the hell we want with it that way. So I think it's because of the prize system actually, because you can't guarantee that you are going to have the, if you say play Ultra Ball and just search for any Pokemon, you can't technically guarantee there's going to be a Pokemon in the deck because it could be in the prizes. So yeah, I believe that is why we are allowed to fail searches, but I don't really care because it's good for us anyway. This allows you to turn an excess search off of Collector into an evolution card that you can then use on your turn. And it just makes stuff so much more consistent. I absolutely adore this card, and again, 3 or 4 of in every single deck that I'm gonna play, basically. The card is too good not to use. I've already spoken about reversal, but just in case you're unaware, you flip a coin and if you get heads, you gust one of the opponent's Pokemon into the active slot. Pokemon Catcher in the modern format, but most of the time Catcher doesn't get played because boss's orders and stuff is a thing. We don't have boss at the moment, so this is the only item-based gusting that we have. Yeah, it sucks that it has to be played. Professor Elm's training method makes a comeback as well. We still have Baby Search right now. I forget exactly when Baby Search rotates, but if it does. Maybe you could see this played. I am not convinced because I think, again, just play more Pokemon Communication, potentially, and just go from there. So, yeah. And I've already talked about the last two, Pont and Switch. Rainbow Energy has a really nice artwork here as well. I've used this one now because it's just cool. And yeah, that's all of the non-Pokemon stuff, except for the Alpha Lithograph down here. There's a couple of secret rares in this set. The Gyarados is nothing special, except it's got a Yu-Gi-Oh attack for, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh name for its attack. That's pretty fun. There's a couple of Alpha Lithographs that come out. They have the unknown decks on them, or the unknown language, so that you can read them, but it's fairly obvious anyway. Look at the opponent's hand as an item card. This one's not super useful. I guess next set with Judge you could maybe know when to like tactically use a Judge or something, but this is going to be like the 75th card or even more within a deck. There's no way you're going to cut space for this one. There was one that saw play that was like shuffle your deck or something, but that's not this one, so yeah. As far as the Pokemon go, yeah, all the primes are good in their own right. Meganium is maybe a bit slow, but we'll get there. So Ampharos Prime, 140 HP, works well with the previous Ampharoses and certain decks as well, or against certain decks. The Conductivity Body, when the opponent attaches an energy from hand to one of their Pokemon, you put a damage counter on that Pokemon. This is unrestricted, so it's as often as they attach from hand, and it stacks if you have more of them in play. Excuse me, but its attack is not particularly good. For a Lightning Double Colorless it does 40, but if you flip heads it does 80. If you flip tails though, 40 and discard an energy. The reason I don't like this is because it's unreliable, right? If you have to flip heads to score the KO, and you flip tails instead, maybe discarding an energy gets you away from stuff like discarding DCE is good, but you're probably relying on actually scoring that KO. And that effectively means this is Lightning Double Colorless do 40 damage, which feels really bad. I do not like this attack in the slightest. But it runs on the Double Colorless Energy, so you can still use it as much as you want, I guess, I don't know. Blissey, I already mentioned this is Pokemon Center when you evolve into it if you choose. What that means is that when you evolve into this, you can fully heal your entire side of the field, but any Pokemon that you healed will discard all of their energy as well. So obviously this works very well for decks that have low energy costs. It also works quite well with the Meganium over here, because Leaf Trans lets you, and there's a Sceptile that did this too, with like energy trans sort of thing. It lets you shift your grass energy around, so you can move all the energy onto a Pokemon that has no damage on it, and then full heal the all of your board. The undamaged Pokemon doesn't discard its energy, and then you move them back over. So there's a decent combination there. Strength is passable in a pinch, you know, 2 energy 60. It's technically free, but double colorless, right? So DC and an energy to do 60. It hits colorless weakness, so it's good against Flygon specifically. Also not completely awful against Garchomp. If you put an expert belt on this thing, then it does 160 to a Garchomp, which is pretty good. Yeah, 1 damage mod kills even an expert belted one at that point, and Garchomp C just melts to this. So there are uses for it even as an attacker. So yeah, cool card. I'll mention the attack on the Meganium here as well, even though it's just vanilla. 2 grass, 2 colorless this time, to do 80 damage. So it's very similar to base set Venusaur, but it does a little bit more damage. It's got more HP, of course, because we're further in, but it's 50 more HP, so that's really substantial. And Solar Beam taking 2 colorless means you can use DCE in the deck as well, which is a big help. Meganium Blissey is something I did build, and it was pretty okay. On to the best deck of the format, like by far. Yeah, Donphan is absolutely busted, and honestly I think Donphan beats the majority of the SP decks as well, so This is just a new standard. It's a stage 1 Pokemon, it's got 120 HP. I'm going to mention the Phanpy real quick as well, as soon as I can find where it's gone, because the Phanpy has Flail, and so you get to play Memory Berry if you choose with this thing, and its tanking high HP stuff is going to come in handy for that. So yeah, 120 HP on stage 1, it naturally takes 20 less damage from any attack, which is both yours and the opponent's. Your attack part is important because the main thing this does is Earthquake. One fighting energy to do 60 damage, 60 for 1, and it only does 10 to each of your bench Pokemon. I always thought this did 20, I'll be straight. It's just like, that sounds balanced, right? No, there's a Donphan in the future that doesn't have Exoskeleton, but it has Earthquake. It does 120 for 1, but 20 to each of your bench. I got them conflated. Ironically, that Donphan shares the same heavy impact attack as this one, but I think it uses Double Colorless instead of Free Fighting. Free Fighting to do 90 damage is a lot. You have to work to get this going, but given that you are pressuring so much with 60, or let's be honest, 80 damage with Expert Belt, you're pressuring so much with that first attack that you can build up to a heavy impact in most games. This card is absolutely insane. Current pairings are, well, basically everything that isn't entirely type locked, but some good pairings are Nidoqueen so that you can heal off the damage every turn. Like if you just Earthquake with a Nidoqueen in play, then your bench doesn't take damage functionally, and the Donphan is incredibly hard to replace at that point. Flygon is not completely awful. I don't like having both in the same deck, but that's just me. Luxray is really good, Luxray GL, because Donphan loves to just pick off stuff that hasn't evolved yet, or just weak things on the bench, and Luxray GL is really good at doing that. And I think we've been finding out, and one thing we've brought back is Gyarados MT, because it also has like a body that lets you copy the Magikarp's attack, which is Flail. So if you Earthquake and self-damage, that Gyarados is going to do more with Flail too. So just some things. I'm sure you could play this in even like a decent SP sort of deck as well, like a bunch of Crobat pings and everything, and just be absolutely insane with it. So yeah, this card is ridiculous. The only thing that's bad about it is it doesn't use DCE, but you don't need DCE with this card. It's just so efficient, and yeah, it'll see play for ages, or it won't because it'll get banned, but you know, one or the other. For Alligator, as the Blastoise equivalent, as you would expect, as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a water energy from your hand to one of your water Pokemon. Unfortunately, type locked, because this would have been very funny with the Shuckle promo that's coming up, like next set or something, where you attach energy from hand to it and you draw a card. Would have been very cool with that, but unfortunately, that doesn't work. Hydro Crunch is a respectable attack, but again doesn't use DCE, which is annoying. For 4 water energy you do only 60 damage, but it does 10 more for every damage counter on the defending Pokemon as well. Pepper was trying this with Palkia, the Palkia G, that lets you do Pearl Breath, and even though we banned the Lv.X, the G is still perfectly good. And yeah, 50 to the active, 10 to each of the opponent's bench, so you can do some good spread stuff with this. Finally, we have the Typhlosion. This card has just been all around fantastic for me. Probably was a bit suppressed at this time because the Gyarados Stormfront was really good. Kingdra is pretty good as well still. So it's like there's some really nasty water decks that are going around. Even potentially the Feraligatr, I suppose. Yeah, there was some awful stuff to go against that way, but it's really solid. 140 HP is good. Afterburner is like Firestarter, where it accelerates from the discard, but it accelerates to any Pokemon, so you can attach active. The catch is that you've got to put a damage counter on the Pokemon that you attach to, so it is a little bit tough to use sometimes, but honestly, the acceleration is just ridiculous, and it synergizes with its own attack too. 2 fire and a colorless, so unfortunately no DCE, but that's okay. 70 damage, I mean, we could do better. You've got to discard an energy from the Typhlosion, that's fine after Burner gets it back, but you also discard an energy guaranteed from the defending Pokemon. this comes up more than you would think. With an expert belt, this does 90, which is enough to two-shot anything, even with expert belts factored in. And yeah, 90 discard their energy is actually really good. It's maybe 10 short of where I would like it to be, because in, say, the Donphan Nidoqueen matchup, if the Donphan has got both Expert Belt and Nidoqueen on it, then you don't two-shot, which is really stupid. But discarding their energy means they can't build it to heavy impact, so it's still really good. This also, discarding Double Colorless Energy can be pretty devastating, so yeah, I really like this card. It works very well with the old Typhlosion that lets you just accelerate to a bench Pokemon without putting the damage counter down, so there are good situations for both. And it synergizes well with the non-holo version in this set as well. We might as well go over the non-holo versions of these primes too. Typhlosion itself, the main thing here is Fire Spin for 2 fire and a colorless again. This time you do 120 damage and discard 2 energy from the Typhlosion. Note that it does say 2 energy, not 2 fire energy, so if you play DCE in the deck, which I do in the version I have for it here, you actually can just discard the DCE, and then you're only 1 attach away from attacking next turn anyway. And 120 is big numbers. That's with an expert belt, KOs like all of the stuff down here basically. You KO Meganium because of weakness. So yeah, really good numbers on this thing too. So helps a lot. For Alligator, might help the deck a little bit, but its attacks don't really benefit from taking DCE here, because the Prime doesn't. Spinning Tail for a Water Double Colorless is 20 to each of the opponent's Pokemon. That's fine, like it's an okay attack, but it's just a little bit, maybe a little bit expensive nowadays for that on the stage 2, and Surf is just 80 for the same cost as Meganium has, so effectively just 4 water for 80. A flat 80 might sometimes be more beneficial than Hydro Crunch, but I think you can do better than this, so yeah, a little bit of a shame. Also, slightly less HP. All of these are going to have a little bit less HP than their regular counterparts, the Prime counterparts even, so yeah, just keep that in mind. Meganium is 20 less, which is a bit of a shame. This one's also just terrible, though. Sleep Powder, this is a very outdated attack at this point. And Giant Bloom doesn't heal enough. Keep in mind, I know it was for an extra energy, but keep in mind Torterra from Diamond Pearl 1, 11 sets ago by now, did the same amount of damage, but it healed from all of your Pokemon for just 1 extra grass energy. This just doesn't cut it. So yeah. Other primes that we have, regular Donphan doesn't really matter. There's no reason why you would ever use this instead of the Prime. I guess Rock Hurl is funny, but yeah, it's terrible, don't care. The Blissey's Double Edge is a little bit more powerful than Strength, but it also does 40 to itself. Energy Link is technically cool though. You could get a DCE back from the discard and maybe, I don't know, Super Scoop Up, I suppose? There's not really a way of like transferring that energy to somebody else, so maybe it's not that cool. But just being able to potentially recycle special energy is noteworthy, I guess. And then finally the Ampharos. I actually really like the Ampharos in this set, the regular one, wherever it's gone, it's up here. It's just like, I don't think you can fit it into a deck, and it also dies in 1 shot to Donphan, so yeah, the numbers are not quite there. But the principle of this card is really cool. Acceleration Bolt for 1 lightning does 30, search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards and attach them to a singular Pokemon that you have anywhere on the board. Can attach to itself. If you manage to rare candy this like turn 1 or something, you could go Lightning, Acceleration Bolt, attach 2 to it, and then Thunder for Lightning Double Colorless. Deck is already playing DCE, so this works out. 80 damage guaranteed. If you flip tails, it does 20 to itself though, which is a shame. Expert Belt does not increase self-damage at the very least, so, you know, that's fine. 80's respectable, plus Expert Belt on that is 100, so that's pretty solid. And, yeah, that one-shots Stormfront Gyarados, so expected, you know, like, it's fine. The problem is it just doesn't have enough HP, and, yeah, it dies in 1 hit to Donphan. There really isn't anything more to say. At least Donphan has to put damage mods in order to KO the other Ampharos that are in the format. This one just doesn't fit the bill. It's too bad. Alright, let's quick fire a little bit through some of the other stuff here. On this top, one thing I will say actually, like the artwork is very distinguished for most of the Heart Gold Soul Silver cards. I love the way that they do item evolutions here. You see the evolution thing in basically all of the cards that need them. So like especially the fire ones are gorgeous here. This Arcanine's not a good card, but my god does it look good with the Firestone there. Clefable, in theory, could do something for a control-style deck if you're needing coming into play powers. Double Colorless Energy, return one of your Pokemon and all cards attached to it to the hand. I don't think it's ever going to see play, but that kind of effect is unique, so kind of worth noting. Jump Off is an exceptionally good card. Mostly saw success in Juniors, because it is a much more straightforward deck to play, but it's very, very good. For one, it's only 90 HP on the stage 2, which is bad. The basic is 30, the stage 1 is 60, so very, very, very frail. But it does do 10 damage for every Pokemon in play for 1 Grass Energy. So this, in theory, if both players fill their boards up, this will do 120 damage for 1. Realistically, you are probably still hitting 90 to 100 because the opponent's going to have to limit their bench something fierce, and that's very hard for most decks to do. So yeah, you are still hitting very strong numbers for this. It's exceptional Beedrill vibes, except Beedrill required multiple stage 2s in play. This just requires you to fill your bench up. Much easier to do. If you can score a KO with Leaf Guard for 1 Grass Energy, you do 30 and cut damage by 30 next turn, so that makes Jump Off a lot harder to kill. Expert Belt takes it to 50 damage, so if you can finish things off with it, absolutely worth it. We're going to change that song because it's vocal. Ninetales is so cool. Gorgeous artwork for one. Really, really love the way the Firestone is used here. And Roast Reveal is so good. If you've played Gen 7, another parallel here because Salazzle had this same ability. Once during your turn before you attack, you may discard a Fire Energy. If you do, draw 3 cards. It's not quite as consistent as like a Claydol because it doesn't tend to draw 6 a lot, but you can combine this with Fisherman so you can get the energy out of the discard and just keep going for it. Obviously discarding energy is super synergistic with Typhlosion, and it is a natural partner for the Charizard in Arceus too, because it is a fire Pokemon and it's a consistency card. So this lets you have a draw engine in a deck that requires you to have basically all of your bench be fire types in order for Zard to do enough damage. The Charizard, for the record, was like, it did 30 for 1, 80 for 2 fire and a colorless, and you discard a fire, but its body did 10 extra, let you do 10 extra damage for every fire Pokemon that was on the bench. So in theory that is 80 for 1, or 130 without Expert Belt for free. So yeah, very strong card. This makes Fisherman viable for stuff too. Noctowl is cute. I mean, Extrasensory is nice, but it doesn't do nearly enough to threaten Donphan. Like, resistance doesn't matter. Donphan with an Expert Belt still 2-shots you. Night Sight is just kind of in the wrong format here. Stage 1, once during your turn you may draw a card. Mentioned this with Dodrio as well, actually. Same sort of idea. But if you can match the opponent's hand size, you do 80 for free, colorless. Okay. I think the promo one down here might be a little bit better. You get to look at the opponent's hand once per turn. Again, control matchup sort of thing. This would let you know when to play your hand disruption. This will let you know when to play stuff like the Slow King that we're going to get into here as well. There's top deck manipulation stuff you can use. And also a promo, Hoot Hoot here does not have the ability to fall asleep. Very sad for Hoot Hoot, but a very good, you know, in terms of what we want. So yeah. Raichu, the only reason I'm not building a deck on this is not actually because of Donphan, because I don't know, I think you could probably make something to work around Donphan. No, it's the fact of I don't know how you power it up. It's as simple as that. 2 Lightning Energy to do Thunderbolt for 100 damage on stage 1, but you have to discard all the energy on the Raichu, and you have to keep discarding all the energy on the Raichu. And I just don't know how you charge that up. Like, There was an Electivire that actually got banned out, but we'd be able to bring back, I suppose, that you could use for it. There's Leafeon level X if we allowed that to come back in, but that's the stage 1 level X, which is not consistent really anymore. Like, if I was using Leafeon, I would want to use a basic Pokemon. I just don't know how you get this going every turn, because if you could, I think this would be really good actually. Yeah, 90 HP is pretty solid for a stage 1. A 0 retreat cost is fantastic. There's a couple of good Pikachu in the format too, including one that if you evolved from a Pichu, you just get a lightning energy to your hand every turn from the discard. So there's some good support for it, and there's a level X that works for it as well. I just don't know how you get this going consistently, and Iron Tail is not an attack that you ever want to use. So, yeah, if I could solve that, I think this would be pretty solid. Slowking, I mentioned this for the control deck type stuff. If there ever would be a control deck, it would be using something like this. Once during your turn before you attack, you may look at the top 3 cards of either player's deck and put them back on top of that player's deck in any order. So the idea would be that you use the Noctowl to see what's in the opponent's hand, see if they've got playable. You then use if they've got playable, you play a disruption card like Looker or Judge or something, and then you look at the top cards of their deck. Or if they don't have playable, then you don't play that and you just go straight to this step. Look at the top cards of their deck, rearrange them to be unplayable next turn, and you just get to do whatever you want. Obvious drawback is the draw supports and such, right? Like if you've got to get rid of their Claydol and stuff first, but Garchomp C level X would be able to take care of that, so I don't think that's unreasonable to do. Yeah, I think there's something there, but we've either banned out the cards that would take advantage of it, or it's a lot of setup, right? It's very difficult to achieve, but I don't know, maybe we'll get there. Butterfree's got a giant head. That's about it. It's artwork appreciation for our boy. We always have to note Kamiya's artwork here, because it's so distinctive. It's not a good card, though. Actually, the Metapod would have been really good if for Pepper's Butterfree deck that he played last round. We didn't get to see it because I was too ill to, you know, play enough games on it. But effectively, it was just a Butterfree heal tank deck, thanks to Expert Belt being a thing. And Metapod over here gives your Grass Pokemon no weakness. So that means you didn't have to worry about Fire types one-shotting you. And yeah, it's really cool. So it would have been a good combo for that, but we don't have that anymore. Cleffer does Cleffer things. It's Eek with 6 E's, so this time it actually does what it's supposed to do. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 6 cards. Cleffer is now asleep. This is obviously very powerful, but right now we don't really need this kind of effect because we have other consistency Pokemon like Claydols and the like, and Spiritomb is really good for the evolution decks if they need to play the slow game. So there's not really space to have this in the format right now, but once we go to Heart Gold Soul Silver on, this is going to be a very key card to look out for. So there is that. Artwork appreciation for the Furret is very cute, but not very good. Hypno lets you flip to put the opponent to sleep. Okay, we had this on the Drowsy in Rocket. Granted, if you flip tails, you went to sleep, but you could use Snorlax and just go around that. So this on the stage 1 obviously isn't very good. Sleep is a terrible condition to rely on, so whatever. Pichu I have seen as a one-of in some stage 2 decks, again after the rotation to Heart Gold Soul Silver, I believe. Playground for no energy lets both players search for as many Pokemon as they like, basic-wise. As many basic Pokemon as you like, and then bench them. So the opponent gets evolution initiative, which is obviously kind of annoying, but this does let you set up your ideal board state. So maybe it's useful, I don't know. You could probably bait someone in a jump left deck with this actually, and like start with this, and then just go, yeah, fill your bench up for me, and just put down a bunch of Hotbips and make them cry. So that'd be funny. Don't know if it's good, but funny at the very least. And then there's some flora over here as well. Excuse me. Sunflora is pretty cool. Once during your turn before you attack, you may search deck for a grass Pokemon, put it into the hand. This is Beedrill's power, the non-attacking Beedrill, but it's on a stage 1 instead of a stage 2, so it's a lot easier to get out. So that's cool. You would think this just pairs super well with Jumpluff, but I think it clunks the deck out a little bit actually. I think you might just be better with Raw Draw in that deck. But still, it does let you take better advantage of red candies and the like, so there's probably something there. I don't know, maybe I just built the deck wrong, and it actually does work very well. Tyrogue is the Baby Pokemon Hunter. This will be just like it was in Gen 2 actually, with it, except now it doesn't have to do a coin flip to do 30 damage. So yeah, expect to see quite a lot of this card when we get into Black and White, because Cleffa is going to be the ideal starter. This beats the Cleffa, and yeah, if you just start Lone Cleffa and the opponent can get a Tyrogue out, you are dead. So yeah, expect a lot of annoying games because of that. Dunsparce is potentially notable just because it is another one of these Shuppet style cards. Right now, plus power does still attach to the Pokemon that you put it on, so you can go with like Expert Belt and 2, 3, 4 plus powers, do 60, 70, 80 damage with this, and then shuffle all of those back into the deck. No, not even. It returns them to the hand, so you can actually just keep doing it, which is very funny. Obviously doesn't establish energy presence, but those kind of decks aren't supposed to. The reason you would play one of these is because it hits colorless weakness, right? This hits the Garchomps and stuff like that could cause you issues, so yeah. And then one of the only other noteworthy ones I think is like Slowbro in theory is really good, but Psychic Acceleration just isn't happening right now. Magkinesis is 30 for free colorless, but 20 more for every Psychic Energy that's attached to the Slowbro. So at a base level, if you just get free Psychic Energy on this thing, it's 90 for free, which is a good conversion rate, right? Like a lot of the time we're doing 80 for free at the moment, so it goes above the pay grade. It's just how do you get the energy on. I think that's about it. There are a couple of unknowns that are worth noting. I'm just looking. Yeah, none of the basics I think really do anything in this set. The Mareep is technically a reprint basically of the Mareep from Neo Genesis, but that also means it's got 40 HP. So yeah, we do not play with that one. And then lastly, the unknowns over here. They are no longer a single letter. They have they spell out what they do on the card. So it's, yeah, you've got the flash ones, you've got the return ones, kind of like what the victory thing was for like Unknown V, for literally Unknown V. That was pretty cool. But yeah, these do have powers, of course. Once during your turn, when you bench Unknown Return from your hand, you may return all energy attached to one of your Pokemon to your hand. So in theory, this could work with the Blissey regular. If you can Energy Link for a couple of turns, you could then go ahead and bounce all of the special energy that you have collected back into the hand, and maybe that's kind of cool. I don't think that's worth it, but you know, it's there. And then the other one, when you bench this, you may look at the top 5 cards of your own deck and put them back on top in any order. Not entirely sure why you would not just use like Slowking. I know it's top 5 instead of top 3, and that does make a big difference, but you're giving up a bench slot for this. Like, I'm just not sure where you could even justify using this, because a deck like Regigigas or Palkia Lv.X, like Palkia G Lv.X, those can get rid of Pokemon on your bench, you know, in various ways, so you can make more space. But those decks will play the Lake Boundary Trio, like the Late Pixies, rather than something like this, because Mesprit's power locking is just really, really strong. So I don't really know where this goes in to like anywhere. So cool effect, just like I don't think you can take up a bench slot at the moment for that. And that's it. Yeah, honestly, ended up going longer than I thought with it. Again, apologies for the brief breaks and things here. Yeah, this sort of thing is still very hard for me to record at the moment. So hopefully it won't be too bad in the games that we play on Saturday, and we'll see some cool stuff. I think Sai is playing the dual Ampharos thing alongside Gyarados to try and deal with Donphan, so that's a pretty interesting match. Pepper's got a couple of things that have been lining up. I don't know if he's going to just play Gator. I think he might not play for Alligator now that we've seen, even though for Alligator is weak to grass, which I guess is worth mentioning. The fact of Rain Dance gets hard countered by by the Ampharos, I don't think he's going to necessarily play that, but we have some cool things in the wings for it, and I've been playing fire decks all week, and it's been really fun actually. I love this Typhlosion. We're gonna see this Typhlosion a lot, one way or another. So yeah. I guess I didn't really mention the promo stuff down here. Noteworthy stuff, this Pikachu's got 70 HP and only a plus 10 weakness despite being Heart Gold Soul Silver. Wobbuffet makes the opponent's active pay more to retreat. Could be very funny at locking in Spiritombs actually. So maybe this is actually okay in the control deck as well. You just can't play Moonlight Stadium because then the Spiritomb still has no retreat. So I don't know. And then the Lugia are terrible. Like, flip for sniping 80 on 4 energy? No, thank you. And Lugia is a water type for some reason. It only does 50 base damage. And yeah, sure, you're averaging 70, but it's unreliable. So nobody's going to care. Yeah, this set is super, super cool though. Like, even just Double Colorless by itself would be enough, but we have this. We have Pokemon Communication. We have Collector that works with the communication. We have Fisherman for the decks that really love it, like Rain Dance loves to have this around. We have Pont, making every deck more consistent, providing they play it, which they should. So good. Like, everything in this set is insane for making decks just flow so much better, and I love it. It's really, really good. So hopefully the games will be enjoyable as well. Hopefully we will get to do it without too much hacking and coughing everywhere. And yeah, thank you for watching this really long video that I said I was trying to be briefing, because, you know, such is the way. Until next time, take care.